It starts quietly, the way the most expensive mistakes always do. No flashing lights. No knock on your door. No warning letter stamped in red. Just a line added to the law, a small change in wording, and suddenly thousands of Canadian drivers are one routine drive away from a fine that can reach $1,000. This is not a rumor. It is not speculation. It is the direct result of new driving regulations taking effect across Canada in 2026, and most drivers do not yet realize how easily they can be caught by them. The dangerous part is not the fine itself. The dangerous part is how ordinary the trigger can be. This is not about reckless racing or dramatic police chases. This is about everyday habits. Things drivers do without thinking. Things that used to result in a warning, a small ticket, or nothing at all. Under the updated rules, those same actions can now stack penalties, trigger administrative fees, and cross the threshold that pushes the total cost toward four figures. Canada's driving laws have always been strict, but 2026 marks a shift in enforcement philosophy. The focus is no longer only on dangerous driving in the obvious sense. The focus is now on risk prevention, data-based enforcement, and zero tolerance for repeat or cumulative violations. That shift is what makes the new fines so costly. The law no longer looks at one mistake in isolation. It looks at patterns, conditions, and context. One violation plus the wrong circumstance can multiply the consequences instantly. One of the biggest changes comes from how provinces now classify certain offenses. Actions that were previously considered minor infractions are being reclassified when specific conditions apply. Speeding is a perfect example. Driving slightly over the limit used to mean a modest ticket for most drivers. In 2026, exceeding the limit by even a small margin in designated zones can trigger enhanced penalties. School zones, construction zones, community safety corridors, and areas monitored by automated enforcement are all treated differently now. The fine amount may look reasonable on paper, but added surcharges, victim assistance fees, administrative penalties, and demerit point consequences can push the final bill far higher than expected. Distracted driving enforcement is another area where costs escalate quickly. Canada has spent years warning drivers about phone use behind the wheel, but the 2026 updates go further. It is no longer only about holding a phone. Interacting with screens, mounted devices, smartwatches, and even certain vehicle integrated systems can now qualify as distraction depending on how they are used. The law allows officers and automated systems to consider driver attention, not just device type. That broad definition makes enforcement more flexible and penalties more severe. Base fines are higher, and repeat offenses within a defined period can result in maximum penalties that approach or exceed $1,000 once all costs are added. Seatbelt enforcement has also changed in a way many drivers underestimate. It is no longer limited to the driver and front passenger. Responsibility for proper restraint now extends more clearly to all occupants, including adults in the back seat in jurisdictions that already required it, but rarely enforced it strictly. In some provinces, the driver is financially responsible for unbelted passengers. Multiple violations in a single stop can mean multiple fines issued at once. The total adds up fast, especially when administrative fees are applied per offense rather than per stop. Vehicle condition violations are another silent risk. Expired registration, outdated insurance documentation, improper plates, or unreadable license numbers were once treated as fixed issues in many cases. Under the 2026 framework, enforcement emphasizes compliance at all times. Automated plate recognition systems are more widely used, and they operate continuously. If your registration or insurance status is not current, you may not even be stopped by an officer before penalties begin accumulating. Notices can be issued automatically, and late fees can push the total cost significantly higher than the original fine. Winter driving compliance is also stricter. In regions where winter tires are required or strongly regulated, failure to comply during designated periods can trigger substantial fines. The law now considers road conditions and seasonal requirements more aggressively. A vehicle involved in a traffic stop or incident without proper seasonal equipment may face enhanced penalties even if no accident occurred. The financial impact is not limited to the ticket itself. Insurance consequences and administrative costs often follow. Another major contributor to $1,000 penalties is how provinces now handle cumulative offenses. The system tracks violations more efficiently, shares data more widely, and applies escalating consequences automatically. 2 or 3 seemingly minor tickets within a short time frame can trigger a higher penalty category. That category often includes mandatory surcharges, higher demerit points, and additional fees that are not optional. Drivers are often shocked to see the final amount owed because they focus only on the base fine, not the full legal cost. Automated enforcement plays a critical role in this shift. Speed cameras, red light cameras, community safety zone monitoring, and mobile enforcement units are expanding. These systems do not issue warnings. They do not exercise discretion. They record, process, and issue penalties consistently. When a violation occurs in a high penalty zone, the system applies the maximum allowed fine automatically. There is no conversation, no explanation, and no second chance at the roadside. Red light violations are another area where costs escalate quickly. The fine itself may appear manageable, but added fees and points can push the total much higher. In some provinces, failing to stop fully before turning right on red, where permitted, can still result in a violation if signage or conditions require a complete stop. Automated systems are calibrated to detect rolling stops, and the evidence threshold is lower than many drivers assume. Insurance implications amplify the financial impact of these laws. A fine does not exist in isolation. Once a violation is recorded, insurance providers adjust risk assessments. Even a single ticket can lead to premium increases that cost far more than the fine itself over time. When multiple violations occur, or when a serious category offense is involved, the long-term cost can exceed the $1,000 mark by a wide margin. The law does not directly set insurance rates, but its consequences ripple outward. Another overlooked factor is administrative penalties. Provinces now rely more heavily on administrative sanctions alongside criminal or quasi-criminal penalties. These include license suspensions, reinstatement fees, mandatory courses, and compliance costs. Missing a deadline to respond to a ticket or failing to complete a required action can add hundreds of dollars in fees without any additional driving offense occurring. New drivers and international license holders face additional exposure. Graduated licensing systems apply stricter limits and harsher consequences to novice drivers. Zero-tolerance rules for alcohol, drugs, and distraction mean that actions allowed for fully licensed drivers can result in severe penalties for new drivers. International license holders may face additional administrative costs, translation requirements, or compliance fees that increase the total financial burden. Commercial and gig drivers are also affected. If you drive for work, even occasionally, certain violations can be treated more seriously depending on vehicle classification and usage. Delivery drivers, rideshare operators, and contract drivers may be subject to additional regulations. Fines issued while driving for commercial purposes can carry higher penalties and employer-related consequences. The law also tightens rules around failure to comply with officer instructions. Not pulling over promptly, not providing documents immediately, or misunderstanding procedural requirements can result in additional charges. These are not dramatic acts of defiance. They are often simple misunderstandings. Under the updated framework, tolerance for these errors is lower and penalties are higher. Environmental and emissions-related enforcement is another growing area. Tampering with emissions systems, operating vehicles that fail emissions standards, or ignoring repair orders can trigger significant fines. As Canada strengthens its environmental policies, vehicle compliance becomes part of traffic enforcement. The financial penalties reflect that priority. One of the most unsettling aspects of the 2026 updates is how quickly costs can compound. A single stop can result in multiple citations. A single automated capture can include several violations. A single missed deadline can add layers of fees. Drivers often realize the seriousness of the situation only after receiving the final notice, when options are limited and deadlines are tight. Ignorance of the law offers no protection. The legal standard assumes drivers are aware of current regulations. Updates are published, but they are not always communicated clearly to the public. That gap between legal change and public awareness is where many drivers are caught off guard. This is why the $1,000 figure is not an exaggeration. It is not a scare tactic. It is the realistic outcome of how the new system is designed. The law is structured to discourage risk through financial pressure. Compliance is cheaper than violation, but only if drivers understand the rules before they are enforced against them. The safest approach is proactive awareness. Knowing which zones carry enhanced penalties, understanding how cumulative offenses work, keeping documents current, and eliminating distractions completely are no longer optional precautions. They are financial safeguards. The cost of a mistake is no longer symbolic. It is tangible, immediate, and heavy. Canada's driving laws in 2026 are not about punishment for its own sake. They are about control, consistency, and prevention. But the effect on individual drivers is very real. The margin for error is smaller. The cost of complacency is higher, and the warning signs are subtle until it is too late. This new law will not announce itself when it catches you. It will simply send the bill. Stay informed, stay compliant, and protect your wallet. Subscribe and share this update so others are not caught off guard.